Hello, everyone, and welcome to another exciting episode of Gorilla Whale, the Godzilla Watch-Along podcast. I am your kaiju consultant, Kevin Carpenter.
Did they kill him? What? I'm Kayla. What?
Kayla, you are in such a great space. You are one of the few Godzilla fans that went into this movie not knowing that Godzilla dies at the end.
Listen, I know it's called Godzilla versus Destoroyah, but honestly, my first exposure to quote-unquote Destoroyah was the My Chemical Romance song, Destoroyah. Did they spoil that in the song? Was I not paying attention?
Is the My Chemical Romance song Destoroyah based off the Godzilla villain Destoroyah? A question for the age. Please look that up right now.
I mean, listen, this is perhaps completely possible. I mean, it's a great song. There's no mention of Godzilla in the lyrics.
Incredible. Moving back to the Godzilla discussion.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to jump straight into the historical context here to show just how unique of a position you're in, Kayla. Godzilla dies. This was the tagline used in much of this movie's marketing, signaling an end to both the Heisei Era of Godzilla and Godzilla himself. Large posters, symbolic funerals, a bronze statue erected in Hibiya, all of it announcing an end that you better buy some movie tickets for, damn it.
I can't believe that they spoiled it like that. I mean, I guess, I don't know, and they felt that it would make them money, I suppose. It's like, oh, we're gonna kill him, come see how. In much the same fashion that we did the first time.
Yeah. This was the main marketing push, was the big spoiler at the end of the movie that Godzilla is going to die. So everyone goes into this movie thinking like, oh, how's Godzilla going to die? How are they going to kill Godzilla? They've never done that before. Well, they did it once.
Yeah. They did do it once.
They did do it once, pretty famously so, and they make sure to reference that a whole bunch in this movie as well.
Yeah. Also, did they rewrite... They retconned some stuff, I think, of the original Godzilla film.
What specifically?
Did they retcon... Maybe I'm wrong. Did they retcon the whole thing with his girlfriend? I felt like there was something...
There's a pretty big omission in the central cast of the original Godzilla.
Yeah, they took out the guy, and they made it seem like his girlfriend... his fiance or whatever was in love with him, right? Like, that's what I was getting.
Yeah, we'll get to that in the summary, I think. But there, you do notice a pretty big omission from the original Godzilla.
I was like, wait a minute. This isn't right. This isn't what happened.
Continuing with the historical context. So they're creating this movie. Remember that they wanted to end this originally around Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. And then they wanted to pass the torch over to TriStar for the American Godzilla. But that ended up in development hell, so they made a few more Godzilla movies. And now it's looking like TriStar might actually get their Godzilla movie made. That and Toho's kind of losing some gas on the Godzilla franchise, considering that they got back to making these year after year after year, and they're getting diminishing returns on ticket sales.
Yeah. Shocking.
Not on merchandise sales, though. By God, are they making their money back frickin' fivefold in merchandise. Buy our toys.
That makes sense to me.
So for this movie, ending the Heisei era, putting the Godzilla franchise on hold, letting it cool for a little bit, but to the general public, they're saying, "Oh no, Godzilla's gonna die, and it's gonna be forever. You guys, we're putting a kibosh on Godzilla. We're never gonna bring him back."
Yeah.
So
don't worry about it.
But we are bringing back the team from Godzilla vs. Mothra, which was technically the most successful of the Heisei movies in terms of ticket sales.
That's really funny. I imagine them looking at a spreadsheet of ticket sales and then pulling up the cast list. It was like, all right, so the nation loved these ones best. Get their availability. We start filming in August.
Yeah, well, we're bringing back the team from Godzilla vs. Mothra, but notably we're not bringing back Mothra. Mothra is gone.
Yeah.
Mothra's in space.
They're like, I don't think Mothra factored into the success of that film at all.
So we're bringing back director Takeo Okawara and screenwriter Kazuki Omori. And we're also bringing back original Godzilla composer Akira Ifukube. And this would be his final movie.
Oh, rest in peace, King.
Yeah, there's an interview where Akira Ifukube talks about how while he was making the overture, the song at the end of this movie where Godzilla dies, he was like, this was a very emotional experience for me because, like, his career was pretty much made by the original Godzilla.
He's confronting his own mortality. Yeah.
And yeah, so this is, a lot of the old guard is dead. This is Akira Ifukube's final movie. This is very much an end to a lot of Godzilla. So we got to make it count. A few ideas are thrown around for Godzilla's final battle. One idea was called Godzilla versus Godzilla, where the ghost of the original 1954 Godzilla reappeared to fight the Heisei Godzilla. Another sorry.
How you gonna fight a ghost?
I don't think they were able to answer that in the writer's room.
What if he crawls out of a TV like The Ring?
That would have to be a really big TV, although I would love to see a scene of Ghost Godzilla like coming out of like a Times Square sized screen in the middle of like a city square. Like that would be terrifying.
Yeah. They're like using footage of the original Godzilla attacks or whatever, and then the screen gets hit by radiation and then it comes out of the screen.
Write that down. I will say that we will also get a Ghost Godzilla later on, just not in this movie.
Oh, sure, of course.
They put that idea in their back pocket.
Well, sensible.
Yeah. So another idea was for remnants of Space Godzilla to latch onto Heisei Godzilla and mutate him into a sort of super space Godzilla that Godzilla Jr. would then have to fight. However, we just had 2 movies where Godzilla fought another Godzilla, so those ideas were thrown out.
Thank God. Not that they're bad just by themselves in a vacuum, but Kevin's correct. We just had. That being said, though, I guess some people are like, yeah, I know I'll always order chocolate ice cream. It's what I like best. Give me more chocolate ice cream. It's like, we just went to Baskin Robbins these last 2 days and you only ordered chocolate ice cream. It's like, yep, that's what I like. So, but I'm glad there was some variety in the movies, that it wasn't just another Godzilla. Destoroyah is sick.
Destoroyah is an awesome final foe.
One of the best. I would say one of my favorites since Biollante, if not actually my favorite since Biollante, probably.
Incredible. So here's the deal. There is a bit of tragedy in this, though. There was also talk of bringing in Anguirus as a guest character. Yeah.
They didn't.
They were going to do a sort of like Hound Anguirus deal that may or may not have mutated into Destoroyah or had him on the sideline. But they had sketches and ideas for bringing back Anguirus, but that idea was scrapped as well. So no Heisei Anguirus, unfortunately.
And they didn't bring back Mothra from the hit film Godzilla vs. Mothra. They just brought everybody else back. Okay, well,
yeah,
tragic.
I know, right?
What could have been? So
eventually, the team settled on the idea of creating a monster based off the oxygen destroyer that killed the original Godzilla in 1954. And of course, we gotta sell those toys, so they're gonna give the creature multiple forms.
Of course. I mean, this is the 90s. Every toy was a Transformer ripoff. Did you have a Bionicle?
I had Bionicles. I had Transformers. There was a cartoon series, I can't remember the name of, I think it was like Dice or something like that, where it had a motorcycle that turned into a raptor. I didn't even watch the show. I just loved that toy concept.
Had the thing. Yeah. Yeah. I think I had a Bionicle. I'm not sure how I got it, because I don't think I got it. Maybe my parents did get me a Bionicle. I don't know.
So anyway.
I didn't like dolls, but yeah.
So we have Destoroyah. And by the way, he's called Destoroyah more than likely because it's a lot easier to trademark Destoroyah than Destroyer.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what it is. It's Destoroyah. You have to pronounce the AH at the end. And so, on December 9th, 1995, Godzilla vs. Destoroyah is released.
Destoroyah is such a wrestler name.
Right?
I don't know why I thought Destoroyah was like like a mean Elvira-esque character, you know, from the My Chemical Romance song.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, oh, Destoroyah must be referencing some sort of, like, Catra or Elvira, like some sort of femme fatale. Like, I don't know why, but I was just like, oh, yeah, maybe it's because the is, like, a feminine suffix in, like, names and stuff. So I was like, oh, yeah, Destoroyah is, like, a BDSM villain lady or whatever. No, terrifying crab creature. Although I'm sure somebody's into it.
I believe I use he, him pronouns in the Destoroyah summary here, although the creature might be referred to by it pronouns in the movie itself. Wasn't paying attention that much to that. Destoroyah could also be a female. I don't, hang on. Destoroyah pronouns. I want to make sure I got this right.
I think, well, the other thing too, I don't know about you, but the subtitles I was watching, I was like, these are a little wonky. So...
yeah.
I don't know, you know, the pronouns could have been completely inaccurate. And Japanese pronouns can get way more complicated than English pronouns.
Cool. So, yeah, so Destoroyah is Destoroyah. I will say, so Mothra's pronouns were also weird in the beginning, but now Mothra is largely considered she, her. And also Titanosaurus from Terror of Mechagodzilla, like the original scriptwriter was like Titanosaurus was supposed to be she, her, but it's never really explicitly mentioned in the movie itself.
That's nice. Feminism.
Even Godzilla in this series, because they have so much of a focus on the baby Godzilla, there's been talk of like I think it was Kenpachiro Satsuma, like the Godzilla suit actor, who was like, yeah, Godzilla's gender is weird in these movies.
I'll say this. I try not to get too deep into the internet Godzilla fandom to preserve my complete and total ignorance coming into the films, because that's kind of the point of the podcast, is that I don't really know much about Godzilla, except, watch just by watching each successive film, but I don't really know necessarily what's going to happen in the next one. So I try not to get spoiled. I don't dive too deep into the fandom, but I have seen people refer to Godzilla as she, her. In the fandom. Like, that seems to be... I've seen both.
Yeah.
Godzilla's gender fluid.
I will say that approach also did very much help you. You watched this movie not knowing the big twist at the end, which most audiences, when this movie came out, knew the twist because that was the major marketing push. Imagine if you went into Captain America Brave New World and you didn't know about Red Hulk. It still would be a mid-movie.
The fact that you picked, of all the movies you could have referenced... Captain America Brave New World was the one. Sure. Well, I guess it was more...
Well, what's another movie where there's a big twist, but there was also the leading angle of the advertising? Because they do that with superhero movies all the time.
Yeah. It's like if they did advertise who Darth Vader was to Luke, but then I didn't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that'd be messed up. Also very funny. I mean, nowadays everyone knows the whole Darth Vader thing, but that's because of cultural osmosis.
Not necessarily. There's a lot of people that don't know, and they watch the Star Wars films for the first time not knowing and have a very pure reaction.
I do not believe you.
Yeah, they're all over TikTok. Not everybody is a nerd.
I fully believe that there are a lot of people on TikTok who have zero media literacy. I can believe that 100%.
Okay, having zero media literacy doesn't equate to not knowing the Star Wars twist. Like, if you don't care about the Star Wars films and you're not friends with anybody that cares about it, you maybe never, learned.
I mean, TikTok is also
the
same place where legions of people go up to, chase ATMs and do this one quick bank hack to get free money.
I'm not saying that there's not stupid people on the internet. I'm also just saying some people have different life experiences, and the pop culture they're familiar with isn't the same pop culture you're familiar with or I'm familiar with.
Well, speaking of pop culture we're familiar with, let's get into the Godzilla vs. Destoroyah summary.
Ayo.
So, Psychic Miki in a G-Force helicopter flies over a smoking ruin in the middle of the ocean. Bass Island, home of Godzilla and Little Godzilla, has been destroyed. While Little Godzilla is nowhere to be found, Big Godzilla soon makes his presence known in Hong Kong, and boy is he mad. Godzilla's back spikes and chest are glowing red, and so is his atomic breath that has that little red spiral lightning thing that he got when he was previously supercharged in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. So that's right, we're starting this movie with a Godzilla rampage. Hell
I
yeah.
love when that happens.
Right?
Guess what other movie did that? Godzilla versus Biollante.
Hell yeah. Well, Godzilla vs. Biollante started with the private mercenaries
it's like
getting into a shootout to electric guitar.
in the immediate wreckage of like a Godzilla attack, because it was all about the Godzilla cells.
Yeah, no, there's fights over Godzilla's scales, but Godzilla famously does not show up until about like halfway through that movie. Like that's kind of a big point of contention.
Yeah, but it's like I guess my thought was like he just rampaged. I guess maybe I misread that.
Yeah,
I thought he had like just rampaged.
Yeah, he had just rampaged at the beginning of Godzilla vs. Biollante, but that's not the same as starting with a Godzilla rampage.
Okay. So we're starting 5 minutes before the end of the rampage this time. Last time it was 5 minutes after the rampage ended.
Yes.
The point is, it hasn't been peace and quiet. It's usually peace and quiet, and then eventually Godzilla attacks. This one is starting with action.
Yeah. Already, it's like Godzilla's mad about something. He's glowing red. He's rampaging in Hong Kong. So we get a different location for him to rampage in. Mm-hmm. They also don't do that great of a job with the city B-roll because they have a lot of the people running away from Godzilla. But also there's like regular traffic and a few people who are nonplussed about Godzilla. Like they couldn't fully clear the streets for the running away from Godzilla scenes.
Yeah. The poor PAs are like, please don't walk through. Oh, okay, like, we got a bogey.
So, G-Force brings in failed college student Kenkichi Yamane, who is the grandson of Dr. Yamane from the very first Godzilla movie in 1954. Specifically, he is the son of the child Dr. Yamane adopted after the first Godzilla killed that child's family.
See, this is where I'm like, wait a minute, they're retconning this because Dr. Yamane's family wasn't killed by Godzilla in the 1954 film.
Yeah, so Dr. Yamane's family wasn't killed, but there is that one child, like he's on the island that Godzilla attacks near the beginning of Godzilla in 1954. Like the first like appearance of Godzilla, that's the child who's like screaming at the camera, and then they bring him over to Dr. Yamane to explain what he saw and who Godzilla was. And then he just kind of hangs out in the background of the movie. And so this movie is like Dr. Yamane adopted him soon after.
I see. Okay. Okay, this may have been the subtitles. This may have just been me not, like, just totally misunderstanding. I thought that they were saying that Dr. Yamane didn't have any other kids, / that his other kid, like, his kid died. Because I was like, wait a minute, she didn't die. Mm-hmm. She was fine. So I guess, but she's the aunt.
Yeah. And it's really weird.
Yeah, she came back. Okay. Yeah, I was like a little confused, and then she popped up, and I was like, wait, okay. All right, okay.
It's really weird because they also bring back Emiko Yamane. So failed college student Kenkichi, he has a sister, Yukari, who's a TV reporter. She's covering the work of Dr. Ijuin and his research on micro-oxygen particles. And Yukari also interviews Emiko Yamane, played by the same actress, Momoko Kochi from the original film. And Emiko tells Yukari that she fears that Dr. Ijuin's research is identical to Dr. Serizawa's research, and his work could trigger another invention of the oxygen destroyer. So the thing is, Emiko, full name in the credits, is Emiko Yamane, which means she never got married to Ogata, who she was cheating on her fiancé with.
Yes. See, this is where I got a little confused because I was like, that's Emiko. No, it's not Emiko. Like, why wasn't it just Emiko got married to what's-his-face or whatever, and these are her children or grandchildren or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand why they kind of complicated it like that.
I looked into this. I could not find an explanation either in movie or out of movie for why Ogata never appears or is mentioned. And the actor was still alive around this time. So, yeah, instead of bringing in Ogata and being like, Ogata and Emiko got married and then had a kid, they're like, Ogata's disappeared. We're not even going to mention him. And Dr. Yamane adopted this other character from the original movie. And so these Yamane grandchildren are going to be from the adopted child rather than the other child, the one that we're also bringing back into this movie.
Who was in a relationship with another, like, And they're connecting her to them anyway. I don't know. It was just a little bit. It felt a little clunkier than it needed to be.
A Godzilla movie being clunkier than it needs to be.
I know. Shocker.
Imagine that.
They don't do that. Also, I got the impression that Emiko was a little hung up on Serizawa all these years later.
Oh yeah.
Like she's like maybe she felt she made a mistake. I don't know, which is wild because we remember the 1954 film. She was not interested in him like that at all. Like she was in love with the Ogata. And now they're erasing history. They're trying to be like, oh no, there's no Ogata. And maybe Emiko was in love with Serizawa, who sacrificed himself for the greater good to prevent the evils of dangerous weapons from being unleashed upon the world. And he took down the first Godzilla. And don't worry about where this other Godzilla has come from. We're not going to touch on that. And she never fell in love again after him. It's like, that wasn't what happened at all.
Yeah, Dr. Serizawa very plainly tells Ogata hey, live a happy life with my fiance who has been cheating on me with you. And then that doesn't happen, which is kind of funny.
And which is, I mean, it's funky because it's like we're kind of in a different continuity / we aren't.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels a little weird to be saying, oh, the events of the original Godzilla film happened, except for these things. I don't know, it was just a weird thing for them to change. I was like, what's going on here? Who wrote this script? Were they a Serizawa Emiko, shipper, and this was their revenge of writing Ogata out of the story completely? Ogata was a cool dude.
Yeah,
I mean we liked Serizawa, but Ogata was cool. I feel like it's just so much more messier to include Ogata. I like the mess. I like the mess of the love triangle and the complication of it, and the fact that it's Serizawa was a good guy. She just wasn't into him,
I mean, more than likely, I couldn't find any official statements on this, but more than likely, the Ogata actor was busy, or the Ogata actor was asking for too much money.
So he could be dead.
Well, no, he was still alive during this time. I did look that up.
No, the character.
Yeah, the character could be dead. Well, I'm saying the behind-the-scenes reason for Ogata not showing up. They still could have written as Ogata being dead. They had black and white photos of all the characters from the movies, which were very fun. Mm-hmm. But I will say, so in an interview on CNN, Momoko Kochi, who played Emiko Yamane, stated, quote, "After the first Godzilla movie, people pointed at me saying, 'Godzilla! Godzilla!' As a young woman, I hated Godzilla, so I thought, no more Godzilla for me. But 41 years later, I watched the film again and realized how great it was for its anti-nuclear theme." End quote.
Wow, that's hilarious. I'm glad that she eventually found peace with it and liked the movie. But yeah, it would be really frustrating to do a job and then it's that's the only job that you're allowed to have ever done, kind of a thing. People don't let you do other things. It's complicated. It's so complicated with actors and their relationships to their work and the fans and all of that stuff. It's because it is a job, but it also is so mired in these emotions and memories. Yeah. But I'm glad she came back.
By the way, there was a story, the actress for Psychic Miki, she apparently stumbled around the set of Shin Godzilla in 2015, and they weren't allowing her in, and she privately told herself wow, they're not allowing Miki on the Godzilla set. How dare they?
Fascinating. Oh, I love that gossip.
So, Kenkichi, the failed college student, grandson of Dr. Yamane, not the son of Emiko, who is also in this movie, another guy. So Kenkichi has studied Godzilla as a hobby, as he says in the movie.
That's hilarious. Your adopted grandfather was the Godzilla expert, dude. And you're yeah, Godzilla is my hobby. I'm not really into it as a full-blown thing.
I mean, it is also funny that they introduce him as a guy who failed his college exams, and yet the UNGCC are bringing him in to all right, so what's your best opinion on what's going to happen to Godzilla? And also, in a previous movie, we had a character who wrote the book on Godzilla, but we don't see him again.
Oh.
Remember?
Are we still pretending that's this? Yeah, no, I remember. I guess I just forgot that we're pretending this is all one continuity. Because the movie forgot.
The movie forgot.
Yeah, they're like, yeah, we need a different Godzilla expert, and it will be this college dropout. I like that it's like, well, here, I do enjoy the trope of kind of the loser genius, slacker genius, college dropout who actually is like got it all together. We don't know why he failed his exams though. Because sometimes, the excuse is they just don't try. They don't feel compelled to try, or there's some other reason that they fail the exams. Like they get busy, they have a psychological breakdown, whatever. I don't know. But he's just like, oh yeah, I was trying to be a doctor or something like that. Like he's like, he was trying to do something scientific, #STEM, and he just failed his college exams.
He's wearing a California t-shirt in his introductory scene, so maybe it's like, man, I want to get out of Japan. I want to go somewhere else. Maybe that's part of it.
Maybe he's a stoner.
Maybe he's a
stoner.
He
failed his exams. Because I feel like, I could be wrong, but I feel like Japan has like slightly stricter drug laws around that.
I don't know the status of Japan's anti-marijuana laws and enforcement in the 1990s. That is one area of expertise I do not hold.
I can't say that I'm too familiar myself, to be honest, but that's my headcanon now.
Well, speaking of areas of expertise, Kenkichi the Possibly Stoner presents two ominous theories to G-Force. The first theory: a volcano on Bass Island, or Birth Island, depending on what subtitles you're reading, erupted, triggering a nuclear eruption from a hidden store of uranium that then mutated Godzilla and potentially killed little Godzilla. The second theory: Godzilla will eventually have an internal nuclear reaction that will cause him to explode, burn up the atmosphere Oppenheimer style, and destroy all life on Earth.
Not great.
Not great. Incredible stakes.
I love that we went back so hard to the existential threat of nuclear annihilation, though. As soon as he said it, I was like, let's go. Yes, finally.
I also love the detail of like, oh yeah, Godzilla's internal network works like nuclear fission, which...
Sure, why not?
Hey, remember Godzilla vs. Biollante? Didn't we have some anti-nuclear bacteria laying around?
Nope.
We keep forgetting that we made anti-nuclear bacteria.
We don't have that. We also don't have an expert on Godzilla that wrote the book on Godzilla. Maybe he hasn't written the book yet. We don't know when he wrote the book, Kevin.
Maybe he's like really procrastinating because the idea of I will eventually write this book got so firmly cemented in his head that he's just like, yeah, I'll get to it eventually.
I'll get to it eventually. Like, he's not worried about it. This is an interesting time loop conundrum, time travel conundrum, inevitability, procrastination. Stop me now before I go down a drain. I mean, rabbit hole.
So if all that weren't bad enough, it's about to get worse. A strange reaction occurs at a construction site that was built where the original Godzilla died. This is weird because Godzilla died in the middle of the ocean. He died in
the ocean.
Yeah, he died in the ocean. But apparently all that water went away. I don't know. This is like a mine in the middle of a city.
This movie is, I liked this movie, to be clear. I liked this movie, but there are little details in it that I'm like, why? It's so, like, it didn't have to be where he died. It could have been one of the places where he rampaged.
Yeah. Well, it does have to be where he died because it has to be where the oxygen destroyer was let loose. That's a very specific part of this movie.
So, they wrote it like that.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The villain is based off of the ramifications of the oxygen destroyer, so they got to make some sort of connection. So
it should have been an underground. It could have been where he died in the ocean. It still could have been a construction site because they could have been doing some sort of undersea cable construction or drilling. There's construction that happens in the ocean. They could have done that. They chose not to. They chose to move it to land, and we're like, nobody's going to remember the exact details of Godzilla in 1954, even though we're referencing it all over the place, right? Like,
and using clips from it.
Yeah, that's the thing that bothers me, is that they're really tied to the original movie here. to the point that they are reusing characters and clips from that original movie, but then they're still changing things that were pretty big, important details in the original movie.
Don't worry about it.
This franchise, man.
So Dr. Ijuin, he's the guy who's working on the micro-oxygen. By the way, he's also, at least from the subtitles that I was watching, he keeps making allusions to himself. It's like, I'm not a wizard's apprentice. I'm not like a sorcerer. I'm not like getting too close to the sun with my research on magic.
This guy cracked me up. I loved him. He kept saying, first off, the guy keeps saying, oh, I didn't discover anything that wasn't already there. I'm just discovering things that are from nature. I didn't create this terrible weapon. I just kind of like found it and harnessed it. Well, yeah, Oppenheimer didn't create the atom. He just figured out how to fucking split it. Like, you're still responsible for your actions and your choices, dude. And then it's also really funny. There's like, I'm no wizard. These aren't dark magics, afoot. I'm not casting curses. It's like, yes, you are. The curses are radiation and oxygen destruction. Like, the curses are the worst weapon we've seen since the nuclear bomb. Like, own your dark sorcery, sir. You are Sauron.
It's also very funny because one of the conversations that he has where he makes the mention of, I'm not a dark wizard, he's like at a table on like a seaside balcony, and it's very like they're trying to create wind, and it's very clearly just a constant fan that's directly next to him. just a quick little special effects notice there.
This guy's vibes versus Serizawa's vibes are so funny in contrast. Because Serizawa was like a dark sorcerer. He had an eye patch, he had a spooky lab, he was like, I am a mad scientist. Not actually evil, though. That's the subversion. And he was tortured by his actions. He took responsibility for them. That was the whole fucking point. And then this guy over here, like Victor Frankenstein, I'm not responsible for my creation. Bro, Mary Shelley's got some words to say, and so does Dr. Serizawa. And so does Ishiro Honda, and so does this film.
So Dr. Ijuin, he takes ground samples from the site of the construction site that was built where Godzilla died, but it's not under the ocean. And he theorizes that the oxygen destroyer awoke and mutated microorganisms from the only other oxygen-destroying time in Earth's history, the Precambrian era. One of those microorganisms escapes Dr. Ijuin's lab. We then cut over to a security guard in a local aquarium where he watches the fish dissolve into bones, just like in the first movie.
They also seem to dissolve one at a time, which is very funny. Whereas in the original movie, they pretty much all die simultaneously instead of one at a time. That aside, though, I don't know that much about chemistry, but sure. I don't know that much about biology, but sure. Why not? Why not have the mutated microorganisms? I'm fine with this. This is sound enough science logic for me.
I just think it's very funny, the concept of an aquarium night security guard. I don't know who's breaking into an aquarium.
I mean, theoretically, people that trade in exotic animals.
Okay, sure.
Maybe,
That's my next heist movie. We're gonna steal a shark.
Well, all the James Bond movies, they'll do, if they want to show how scary the villain is, he'll have a tank full of like piranha or sharks or whatever. So maybe the security guard is there to protect against the James Bond villains, exotic animal broker thief guy that's like breaking into all these aquariums trying to find dangerous exotic fish to stock up this evil villain's lair.
That I feel like that'd be more plausible in the Showa era, where like every other movie was a James Bond plot stapled to a Godzilla movie.
Oh, you know what? I bet. Okay, maybe the maybe the security guard isn't there to prevent people from breaking in. Maybe he's there to prevent the animals from breaking out, specifically the octopus, because those fuckers are tricky, and there are multiple documented instances of octopi getting out of their containers, their cages, their tanks or whatever, and eating the other fish. So he's there to keep the fucking octopus in the cage, and then he says this oxygen destroyer microorganism thing, attack the fish one at a time and skeletonize them.
That's a firm argument. Okay, you know
And
what?
he's so distracted by this, the octopus gets to carry out his heist.
So to recap, Godzilla is a literal time bomb that could destroy all life on Earth. Little Godzilla is nowhere to be found, and a microorganism with the powers of the oxygen destroyer has gotten loose. Well,
Into the aquarium. What damage will it do?
Well, after eating all of those fish and turning them into bones, the microorganism is no longer micro. It grows to human size and also turns into multiple crab-like monsters that infest the Tokyo Telecom Center.
You know what? At least we know what Destoroyah's diet is.
Yeah, everything.
I'm fine with it. It's an omnivore.
As G-Force SWAT teams pour into the building to fight these monsters, Dr. Ijuin gives them a name, Destoroyah.
Yeah.
So in a scene...
Yeah, okay, I also was like, this is the alien friend... Thank you, sorry. I've read ahead on the summary. Go ahead.
I love how you're commenting on the thing I haven't read yet.
So sorry.
So in a scene straight out of Aliens... Kayla?
Thank you. I also thought that this was like very alien, as there's literally several homages, but I love it because I fucking love it, the alien movies. They're so...
I love Aliens in particular. I love the concept of here's a spooky, scary horror monster, and we are going to meet it with teams of incredibly heavily armed people. And if it's still scary after that, that's a great movie.
I think, okay, so we can't do a bonus episode necessarily on the first Alien, because the monster's not gigantic. It's not technically a kaiju, but Aliens does feature a giant monster alien. So it is technically a kaiju film. We could do it for a bonus podcast.
Oh, speaking of the bonus podcasts, audience, we have multiple bonus episodes available on our Ko-fi. You can go to it at ko-fi.com/Digital Kaiju Studios, throw a little bit of money our way, enter our exclusive Discord chat and talk with other people about kaiju, Gorilla Whale, the rest of our podcasts, and also listen to some of our bonus episodes on movies like Mothra, King Kong, and others. Check it out.
Wow, look at that segue.
Gotta get that plug in there. So,
yeah, it's really good.
In a scene straight out of Aliens, these heavily armed SWAT teams fight the multiple Destoroyahs in the Tokyo Telecom Center, but they are unable to contain them and their oxygen-destroying laser beams. The Destoroyahs escape the building, and one almost kills reporter Yukari as she hides in an abandoned police car, straight out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah, and then the Destoroyah opens its mouth, and a smaller mouth shoots out of that mouth and snarls at her, just like an alien.
I wonder where they got that idea.
I love it, though. You can totally homage other films. Why not? This isn't like when they tried to do the Raiders of the Lost Ark for some reason.
Yo, did you see Raiders of the Lost Ark? Yeah, I saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, bro. Let's put that in a Godzilla.
What if Indiana Jones fought Godzilla and also didn't pay his child support?
Only a rescue from Dr. Ijuin, as well as multiple SWAT units carrying flamethrowers, saves Yukari's life. Meanwhile, on the Godzilla end, G-Force cannot attack Godzilla with conventional weaponry, or they risk igniting the world-ending nuclear reaction. So, after creating a Mechagodzilla, a Super Mechagodzilla, and a Mogera, it's time to go back to basics. G-Force unveils the Super X-3, an upgraded version of the anti-Godzilla jet, once again piloted by Commander Sho Kuroki from Godzilla vs. Biollante.
Yeah! There's also a very strange thing here that happens with there's a new pilot, and then it's a guy that we've already met before.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. So Sho Kuroki, he was the guy in Godzilla vs. Biollante who piloted the Super X2. And I say piloted, but that was when the Super X2 was remote. And now we're back to people actually being in the anti-Godzilla jet. So that's great.
Yeah, he's not a drone pilot anymore.
Yeah. But the character of Sho Kuroki returns, but the original actor, Masanobu Takashima, does not.
Yes, I noticed. I was like, he's not quite as hot as before.
Yeah. Sho here is portrayed by his brother, Masahiro, who also played Aoki, the pilot, in Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2. So they bring back the actor who was the pilot for Mechagodzilla, and then they go back to that actor, and it's like, hey, we need you to play a pilot that fights Godzilla, but not that character. We need you to play your brother's character.
I wonder what his relationship with his brother is like. Was this psychologically damaging?
I was not able to find any
career?
reasons for this casting change.
What a fascinating little nugget. Like, okay, you know,
It's just so
he could
funny.
have just played. Wait, Aoki didn't die, right?
No, Aoki lived at the end of
Why didn't
Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2.
Yeah, so why didn't he just play Aoki?
I don't know.
He was also a pilot.
He was also a pilot for a conventional jet.
Okay.
I don't know.
Again, the movie's mostly pretty good, but then it'll do these little things throughout it that kind of snag, and it doesn't completely derail the film. It's not like a logic fallacy. It's just like a weird little thing, you know?
And this is just also just a weird tradition in these Godzilla movies where they'll bring back actors who played similar roles in previous movies, but they have to make them a different character. Or they'll have characters who fit the same archetypes, but for some reason they gotta make them different characters with different actors or something like that. It's absolutely
so weird, because then they also have Miki, who comes back in like 5 movies, like several movies now. Miki has come back as the exact same character to fulfill the function. So what's going like? Was Miki herself just so super popular and everybody else not? I don't know. I don't know.
So the Super X3 has been kitted out with cryogenic weaponry. As the superjet flies out to Godzilla in the middle of the ocean, it unleashes its payload and flash freezes Godzilla, delaying the nuclear reaction and buying G-Force some much-needed time. Or it would, except the reaction might now cause a meltdown instead of an explosion, and so Godzilla will now superheat and sink to the Earth's core and kill everyone anyway. Whoops.
This is low-key a concern with nuclear power plants.
Yeah.
Not necessarily sinking all the way down to the Earth's core, but just sinking into the ground and thus poisoning like a whole bunch of the land and the groundwater around it.
Yeah, the burning up the atmosphere is straight out of Oppenheimer, and then the superheating and becoming super dense and sinking down into the Earth is like more of a nuclear power plant anxiety. So we got to get all the different flavors of nuclear anxiety in here.
Yeah, it's great.
Also, by the way, I shit on the special effects a lot in these movies. The effect of Godzilla being flash frozen is actually pretty good.
It's kind of funky because his cheeks are so big.
Mm-hmm.
He's like got chipmunk cheeks when it happens. But I think the effects in this one were pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Godzilla being lit up, the steam coming off of Godzilla being flash frozen. Like the actual like kaiju
This was
effects
a well-shot film.
Yeah.
Yeah, the effects are good and it was well shot.
There's a later scene where the mini Destoroyahs are like running around the city, and we cut to a wide shot, and it's very clearly like the Destoroyah action figures just kind of being carted around without like moving their legs, and that one's bad. But you know, there's some good, some bad.
Stop motioned that one.
Yeah,
yeah. There is a really funny shot of Destoroyah like dragging Godzilla. This is at the end, but Destoroyah dragging Godzilla on the ground, and it's like a wide shot, and it looks kind of comical because it's a wide shot, and the music I don't think that they were really playing. It was just kind of like quiet, you know, and it's just like it looked like a kid dragging a stuffed animal across the floor or something, you know.
Speaking of the special,
I did laugh when I saw that.
Speaking of the special effects, by the way, this is another fun fact. In an interview with Newsweek, Godzilla suit actor Kenpachiro Satsuma stated, quote, Sometimes you see Godzilla coming out of the ocean, and you see him fighting, and there's gas coming out from here and there. That's carbonic acid gas. The Godzilla suit only had 12 very small holes to allow me to inhale air. When they used the gas, I'd inhale that and faint. Godzilla nearly died 6 times. End quote.
Oh my god. They have got to stop the shit that these Godzilla suit actors go through.
And they're gonna keep rolling.
This is not safe. This is not. What are the unions in Japan doing about this? Are there actor unions in Japan? Why? Why are you going to kill this man for a monster movie? Oh my god! Thank God it's CGI now.
Right.
I'm so glad that the Godzilla actor is now just a guy in a booth going squawk.
So let's check in on Psychic Miki. Miki is worried about little Godzilla, who she can no longer feel with her psychic powers. She also has a conversation with American-trained psychic Meru Ozawa, who just wants to live a normal life after this whole Godzilla thing is taken care of. As Miki reflects on what she may want, suddenly a Godzilla appears on a beach. But this isn't the big Godzilla. This is little Godzilla, now mutated into a teenage Godzilla form known as Godzilla Jr.
I saw him and my first thought was actually, oh my god, he's a teenager.
They grow up so fast. And so do the Destoroyahs. Now the size of buildings, the Destoroyahs emerge in Tokyo and start rampaging. They also show off their new ability to fuse together into one big flying Destoroyah. Buy our toys. College student Kenkichi decides that the only way to kill 2 kaiju with 1 stone is to make the Godzillas and the Destoroyahs fight. Psychic Miki is reluctant to put Godzilla Jr. in harm's way again, but it only takes a little encouragement for her to follow orders and psychically move Godzilla Jr. toward Destoroyah.
Once again, the let them fight strategy coming out in a Godzilla film. And honestly, it's not a bad strategy in my opinion.
Works every time.
What else are you going to do, you know?
I do want to pause here and just kind of talk about Miki here real quick. She is the character that has appeared in the most Godzilla movies, and she doesn't really have an arc besides feeling a little bad toward Godzilla, but not enough to go against orders, except for that one time she popped off the telepathic amplifier after it was already deemed useless.
If Godzilla is a metaphor for nuclear bombs and nuclear weapons, what is Miki's attitude supposed to be? That Miki is well, I don't really think that we should be using nuclear bombs. However, I guess we gotta,
Yeah.
It's a weird stance.
It's the same argument that's kind of pointed toward the oxygen destroyer in this movie. Because Emiko is very much we need to stop the micro-oxygen research so that way we don't create another oxygen destroyer. And then that kind of falls away. We don't really get an answer on that conflict.
Yeah. The technology question and weapon development and uncautious scientific advancements with regards to destructive powers, it fades away a little. And Miki especially, it feels like her character, if she had a stronger stance, it would be better. But her character feels so lukewarm because it's she's sympathetic to Godzilla, but she'll still use Godzilla. And it's not necessarily done in such a way that it makes you feel I think that they could have done Miki is sympathetic to Godzilla and still uses Godzilla. And instead it kind of just feels like she doesn't have a lot of agency in that regard. She's a little bit of a pushover instead of her actively choosing to have sympathy for Godzilla and still weaponize Godzilla. You know what I mean?
It feels like the addition of the other psychic character, Meru, is one, to like put the idea in her head of like, what are you going to do after Godzilla? And two, that scene where it's like the UNGCC, or G-Force rather, are like, we're going to use Godzilla Jr. as bait once again. And Miki is like, I don't want to do that. And Meru's like, if you don't do it, I'm going to do it. And so Miki is like, well, okay. And then she uses Godzilla Jr. as bait again.
Yeah. Instead of trying to stop that.
Yeah.
You know? And again, I feel like there's a way to do it where Miki's like, well, if somebody's going to do it, I want it to be me, kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But they don't really get into it.
They don't really get into that. Also, she doesn't do her standard thing of like looking toward the camera dramatically and being like, Godzilla's approaching. Like, she doesn't even do that this movie.
Yeah. It feels like it ends up being that Emiko and Miki kind of stand in. If their stances are essentially, you know, what's the word I want? Disarmament. If their stances are essentially disarmament, it's a very lukewarm approach to it, and it feels more like lip service to the idea of, oh yeah, pacifism and disarmament and peace and blah blah blah, but like, we gotta use the weapons now.
Yeah, I mean, really,
this time we gotta use them.
Really, the main theme of this movie is, here's how the present situation can get so messed up that the creation of a weapon of mass destruction can be seen as the one thing that can save everything. Yeah,
which feels counter to
feels
the
weird with a
Godzilla.
movie that's referencing the original Godzilla
that's
a lot.
So into the original, and that's what I'm saying. Is like, that's the whole larger thing. Is like, they keep referencing the original Godzilla and then like retconning little things about it in a way that's like, why would you do that? And then the entire larger theme and plot is that that's what they're doing. They want, like you always say, they are chasing the high of Serizawa's sacrifice and chasing the high of the original Godzilla and how good it is. And this time they're really, really leaning on that original Godzilla and going, remember that? Remember how good that was? And then undermining the entire thing in its own execution.
It's absolutely incredible. I literally just came to that conclusion while we were talking about it on this podcast. And I'm just like, dang.
Yeah, to be fair, I watched this movie this morning and then immediately went into it. So it's like, I'm formulating my thoughts on it in real time, which I don't know. I feel like that's kind of the point of the podcast.
Hell yeah.
Just for me to sort of figure it out like in the moment. But yeah, I don't know if I like it as much as I did when we started now.
So
I'm begging for filmmakers and artists and creators to have actual convictions, because when they do, it's really good.
Mm-hmm. So psychics Miki and Meru are in a helicopter. They hold hands to get their psychic powers charged up, and they that
was a funny little sequence. They start holding hands and closing their eyes, and then there's like gentle music, and I'm like, are they about to kiss? Like, what's going on here?
Yeah. Well, Meru has this aggressive personality because she's American trained.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't care about being a psychic. I want to be done with this. As soon as Godzilla's gone, I want to be a normal girl and get married and have kids, which is a whole other theme that we saw a bunch in Godzilla versus Mothra.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, sorry. Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. That was the one with baby Godzilla.
She can have a career, but it's not the end goal. She really just wants to... She only has a career right now because she has to. She really wants to be a homemaker.
And yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah, but that's the thing.
Disclaimer, that's fine, but it's interesting.
Her presence in the story is supposed to drive Miki toward that same conclusion.
Which is weird.
Yeah. So they hold hands, they mind control Godzilla Jr., and then they just kind of sick Godzilla Jr. on Destoroyah.
What if we held hands and weaponized the kaiju?
So to his credit, Godzilla Jr. holds his own against the Destoroyah, taking hits and blasting away with his atomic breath, just like dear old dad. So already, million times better than Manila.
Oh yeah, Godzilla Jr. I love this guy.
I thought they were gonna do something with the end of the previous movie where like little Godzilla had the little bubble breath with his atomic powers, but no, he just has his atomic breath now.
Yeah. Thank God.
So, as Destoroyah flees, Godzilla Jr. reunites with Godzilla Sr., who is still glowing red and pissed off. It's a touching moment that is then immediately cut off by the appearance of Destoroyah's final perfect form.
Which is sick.
Yes, previously, Destoroyah looked like a four-legged crab spider creature, but now he stands on two legs, has huge devil wings, massive horns, and a sphincter on his chest that he was originally supposed to fire laser beams out of, but then that got cut from production at the last minute.
Yeah, so he just is a weird chest asshole, but it's spooky. I don't like it.
It's spooky. It's there. It's part of the design. You know, in the video games, he'll shoot lasers out of it, but not in this movie. They ran out of money. So... I mean, even without the chest lasers, Destoroyah is still one of the scariest looking kaijus today.
Destoroyah is the best part of this film.
There's also, I saw some stuff where part of Destoroyah's design was based off of Devilman from the manga Devilman, and I could definitely see it in the horns and the face.
Yeah.
So I think that's a cool reference. So Destoroyah grabs Godzilla Jr. and flies through the sky before dropping him onto a building and firing lasers at him.
It looks like the Balrog.
Yeah. Kind of.
The horns.
I can see it, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a Balrog. That's the entire time I was like, have I seen a picture of Destoroyah before? Why does it look familiar? It looks like the Balrog. The Balrog is sick. Also, the Lord of the Rings hasn't been turned in. The Peter Jackson movies don't exist yet, so.
Oh, there we go. So the Balrog looks like Destoroyah.
Maybe the Balrog looks like Destoroyah. I don't know if it was in the animated. There was an animated one. It doesn't matter. Carry on.
So Godzilla Jr.'s dead.
Yeah. What the fuck?
So imagine you come into this movie, all the marketing is Godzilla dies. And you're like, oh, I can't wait to see how, the big G goes down. And then you get to this part and Godzilla Jr. dies. And everyone's like, what? Huh?
I mean, what did we expect, I guess?
Yeah.
It is tragic and sad, though.
Yeah. And Psychic Miki, she comes out of the helicopter. She's in distress because she did mind control this creature into being in a kaiju fight for her own gain. And then
he's a teenager. And you sent him into the Hunger Games to die.
Yeah, but she totally cares for Godzilla Jr. She feels real bad about mind controlling and sending this teenage creature into a war zone. She feels really bad about it, and that's the end of her character arc.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel real bad about sending these teenagers to go die in war, but, at least I feel bad about it.
Yeah, not enough to rage.
You know who else feels bad? The teenagers, as they died in war. Their families, as they mourn the teenagers that died in war.
Well, don't worry. Miki still gets the trailer shot when she turns to the camera and says, "This may be Godzilla's final battle."
I mean, it was advertised as such
until,
TriStar.
Yep. So, enraged by the loss of his son, Godzilla shows up to Destoroyah and starts fighting. At first, Godzilla takes some hits from Destoroyah's lasers, his claws, and his tail, which Destoroyah uses to drag Godzilla around the battlefield.
Yes, yeah. That was the funny shot.
Yep. By the way, behind the scenes, they were shooting one of those scenes where Destoroyah had Godzilla by the tail and was flying around and dragging him. And during the shoot, at one point, they had a collision. So...
A collision?
Yeah.
What kind of collision?
Well, the Destoroyah flying prop was flying around, dragging around Godzilla, and then it crashed into some equipment and some people. Then they had to reset up.
What is with the safety regulations on these sets? Oh my god.
They got 1 year to make this movie.
Yeah, and it fucking showed in the workers' comp bills.
Yeah.
Good God. Did they have a set medic on hand at least?
Probably.
Not paid enough. I don't know that they did, because these sorts of accidents... I mean, the suit actor was breathing in poisonous gas and fainting.
But then...
So I don't trust that they automatically had a set medic.
But then, Godzilla gets right up in Destoroyah's face and beats him into the ground until he draws green blood. Destoroyah then transforms into multiple smaller Destoroyahs once more, but Godzilla just kind of throws them around.
That's really funny. It, like, disassembles.
It's doing that, like, Hedera thing where even though it has a perfect form, it can still go back into its previous forms, which I kind of like.
Mm-hmm.
Godzilla
Yeah.
famously can't deal that well with kaijus that have different tactics.
Yeah.
So it is kind of interesting how Godzilla holds his own against Destoroyah as he's, like, flying around. It goes to his perfect form. It goes to his multiple forms.
Paladins are really good at 1v1ing one big creature. So Destoroyah was like, I need to swarm with multiple creatures. That's how you take this guy down. But he's got rage.
Yeah, and also...
He has a nuclear pulse.
nuclear-charged Godzilla. So, as psychics Miki and Meru are helicoptered away from the battlefield, Godzilla takes a moment to approach his fallen son. The king of the monsters tries to breathe life into Godzilla Jr., to no avail. Steam is rising off Godzilla, and the nuclear meltdown seems imminent. And then Destoroyah shows back up. Godzilla can't have a single moment to mourn his son before he's thrown into a building.
This is also not the first time that Godzilla Jr. dies. Because Godzilla Jr. died in the other film, and then Rodan resurrected him with his life transference powers.
No, remember
But
Godzilla went down, and then Rodan resurrected him with his life transference powers.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah.
Why did I think it was this Junior? Oh, because it was the egg hat. It was the...
Yeah. Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, that was baby Godzilla. He wasn't involved in the fight. And then Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, he got kidnapped by Space Godzilla.
Yes.
This is the only movie where Godzilla Jr. is involved in the fight, and he's actually holding his own for the most part, and then he dies.
Damn.
Yeah. Still
Poor guy.
Still has one up over on Manila. Let's be real.
Yeah. One up over Manila. Godzilla Jr. has 10,000 ups over Manila, as far as I'm concerned. I will hate Manila. I'll be a Manila hater till I die. Sorry, not sorry.
We've received comments over like, well, at least Manila killed King Ghidorah, and it's like when your dad and 12 of his friends beat up a guy and then hold him up for you to get a swing in, that doesn't count as winning the fight.
That's like saying Brutus killed Caesar. It's like Caesar was stabbed 22 times before Brutus ever did anything. Like, he dealt the finishing blow. The man was comatose, all of his bones broken on the ground after being run over by a Humvee 2 times. Like, but I killed him because it was my blood. That was mercy at that point.
Nepo Kaiju.
You didn't do shit. Nepo Kaiju.
So the time is now. G-Force mobilizes their Maser lasers and the Super X3 to assist Godzilla in the fight, and together they unleash almost everything they have at Destoroyah. Destoroyah falls from the barrage. But then, Godzilla's tail spikes begin to melt, and massive amounts of radiation start emanating off of him. The meltdown to end the world is occurring. G-Force fires every other bit of cryogenic weaponry they have at Godzilla, and while they stop the full reaction, they can't stop all of it. We watch as the flesh melts off Godzilla, and Tokyo is consumed in a cloud of radiation.
Well, there goes Tokyo.
Yep. Godzilla is dead. All the humans look on, including Psychic Miki, who realizes her work with Godzilla is finished. Perhaps Tokyo becoming an irradiated ghost town is the price to pay for the misuse of nuclear energy, is what Dr. Ijuin and another character says as they watch over this. Mm-hmm. But then, a familiar roar. The radiation across Tokyo falls rapidly. In the final shot of the Heisei Era, we see a Godzilla-sized silhouette framed by bright white light and blue mist. Godzilla Jr. has absorbed the radiation from his fallen father. Even when Godzilla dies, there will always be another Godzilla. Roll credits, montage of previous Godzilla movies.
So he wasn't dead. Like, I guess so he resurrected him through a nuclear meltdown?
Well, so Heisei Godzilla is dead. It's hard for you to come back from your skin melting off your bones like it's a Texas barbecue.
But Godzilla Jr. died and then resurrects when his dad, like, he absorbs the radiation from his dad.
Correct.
Okay.
So now there is another Godzilla that has all of the radiation and size and powers of the original Godzilla. He's a little more acclimated to humans, but there's still another Godzilla now.
No, see, Kevin, this movie was advertised not to me, but to the public as Godzilla is dead. And you're telling me that functionally Godzilla is not dead.
So Godzilla is dead, but now Godzilla is here.
This feels like a metaphor for the franchise.
Yeah. Yeah.
In that they tried to make it, but also in a really, like, this is a very meta commentary, I think, on the entire franchise, because they try to have this whole poignant, like, Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2. Isn't that the one where they're talking about the writer was like, oh, what made the first Godzilla movie so poignant was that Godzilla died.
Yeah.
And he wanted to kill Godzilla in this one, but they wouldn't let him. And we're like, you're missing the point. It wasn't poignant because Godzilla died. Like, the franchise wasn't there yet. Like, he just died. They didn't know there was going to be all of these movies. Like, yes, of course he died. And it was poignant. But, like, you think it was poignant because, oh, we killed Godzilla. It's like, he wasn't Godzilla yet. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
With all of the baggage of the franchise and the popularity of that. It's like, well, they're doing it now in this one, except they won't commit to it because his son gets resurrected. So they're still like, oh, it lives on and it continues. And it's like, we know you're going to reboot it anyway with a different continuity. So, like, what? And this movie leans on the original Godzilla so much while completely undermining its original purpose. Again, like multiple movies before it. And Miki, what are you going to do after this? It's like, Miki, you barely have a purpose because you're so wishy-washy about the kaiju. So you're not really there to protect the kaiju or to make any sort of grand statements about how the humans are using the kaiju or not using the kaiju or whatever, you know, as the kaiju are standing in as weapons of mass destruction. And you're like, my entire purpose is Godzilla's. Your entire purpose is to tell everybody that there's a giant raging lizard. They know he's a giant raging lizard. It's hard to miss.
And sometimes that doesn't even work, because she will lose psychic connection with these creatures randomly.
Like, it's bad cell phone reception. And you're just like, what is the... And listen, it's not Miki's fault that she's not a well-written character. She's a fictional character. My problem with Miki isn't Miki herself. It's everything that Miki represents about the way the filmmakers are handling this entire situation. I was like, oh, this movie is my favorite since Godzilla vs. Biollante. No, Godzilla vs. Biollante is the best film of the Heisei era, bar none. This one, second sickest monster, but ultimately, it undermines any point it's trying to make and its position within the larger, like, Godzilla franchise. It trots around the corpse of 1954 like a dead puppet.
Which was the original idea. Remember, Ghost Godzilla.
God, Ghost Godzilla. Ah! When will I get to watch Shin Godzilla, Kevin? We're getting close. It's 1995. We're getting so close.
Yeah, we still have an entire millennium era to go. So, speaking of eras, though, so this is the end of the Heisei era. We had the return of Godzilla in 1984. Now it's 1995, so 11 years later, we've finished up the Heisei era after Return of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Biollante, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla 2, Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla, and now Godzilla vs. Destoroyah. 7 movies, 11 years.
We did it, King.
We did it.
Except we got more to do.
We got more to do. We got the Millennium Era.
Just like this freaking film. It's like, oh, you did it. You killed Godzilla. JK, there's another Godzilla. That's me at the end of this era. There's more to watch. Except I know better films are on the horizon, so there is hope.
There's still hope indeed. By the way, so there was a short like a Godzilla short created like recently, like in the 2020s, of Godzilla fighting Gigan Rex. And the way it's framed is very much like, oh, this is the Godzilla Jr. of the Heisei era fighting a Heisei version of Gigan. And we'll watch that later on in the podcast once we get to when those shorts release, because they also released a Godzilla versus Hedorah short. So I really want to get into those when we get into those. But I will say that in a animated short in the 2020s, big Godzilla Jr. will return.
Wonderful.
So I don't know. I think like just reflecting on this, this is the Godzilla era where they had a recurring character in a franchise that famously throws away characters and then sometimes brings them back for random reasons, mostly the Yamanes. And then Miki herself doesn't really have that much of a character arc for being brought back for most of the Godzilla movies. And
yeah,
I think
if she's meant to be our protagonist character, they didn't necessarily do that great of a job with it.
yeah, it's interesting because the Heisei era, I think, is kind of marked by a lack of adherence to themes, especially once we leave Godzilla versus Biollante. Like Godzilla versus Biollante really, and also Return of Godzilla to an extent, really leans on the whole Godzilla as nuclear annihilation in the face of new international relations at the tail end of the Cold War. And then as soon as we get into Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, it's back to Godzilla is here to fight a giant monster, buy our toys.
Yeah.
Like we try to have environmentalism, doesn't really work. We do have anxieties over over Japan becoming the economic superpower and the rise in technology in a bad way in Godzilla versus King Ghidorah, and then in some interesting ways in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, but not really the same way they tried to pull off environmentalism in Godzilla versus Mothra. They try to pull off technology versus organics in Godzilla versus Mechagodzilla 2, in that they have people looking at the camera and saying this theme without actually building the theme in the movie itself.
Well, the themes are very token. Like, they come up with the plot and then they're like, oh, we need a theme, which that's not how good writing really works. You know, usually the plot and the theme should be developed like simultaneously, or rather the plot comes from the theme. That's like, would we, and I get, you know, whatever, people all have their own processes, but from my experience, when I'm looking at creators who I think are brilliant and who are doing great work, and it's like, oh, how'd you come up with this idea? So often the theme comes first. They have this thing that they want to talk about, and then they go from there. Ishiro Honda had a lot of anxiety around nuclear, like he saw what nuclear weapons were doing to people, and he said, I want to make a movie about this, and then he wrote Godzilla. Suzanne Collins was seeing the depiction of war on national television, reality television, the way that all of that was like blurring together, the way that the United States was handling the Iraq war and broadcasting everything, the way that reality television was blurring the lines between real life and, you know, a depiction of that, the way that the United States was allowing its children to die in school shootings without really fundamentally changing any laws that could prevent that, and said, hey, I've got some things I want to talk about. What if I wrote the Death Games books? You know, what if I took Battle Royale and just went ham with it and made a commentary on America eating its young? Like, the problem with the franchise now is that you start with Godzilla and then they're shoehorning the theme in. It's like, Godzilla comes with the theme. The theme is nuclear annihilation and war. Like, it's there.
Even in the objectively worst Godzilla movie, All Monsters Attack, there was still I want to talk about latchkey kids and the dangers of industrialization.
Yes.
And while the movie itself is terrible in every single angle, at the very least, they're trying to say something. But
it's coherent. I understand what they're trying to say.
But like a lot of the Heisei movies aren't trying to say anything. It's just, we need to make a Godzilla to make that Godzilla money. And it's... And like there's so much cool about the Heisei era. I like how Godzilla is made into more of a destructive force instead of the goofy wrestler that we see in the later Showa era. I like how they get a little bit more international with the casting and the storylines. There's a real deep pit once we get to Godzilla versus Mothra in terms of quality. But
yeah,
at the end of the day,
the kaiju are cool.
The kaiju are cool.
Like all
They're
the new
swings.
kaiju are really cool. Like there's so much that it's like, oh, this could have been there. You've got all of the parts, you just can't quite put them together right.
Yeah. So there's an interview clip that I want to talk about before we transition to what movie we're going to be talking about next. But before I do that, Kayla, what would you rate Godzilla versus Destoroyah?
This is tough because This movie does frustrate me in a way that's similar to how a lot of the other movies have frustrated me. However, I feel like this movie is put together slightly better than a lot of those other movies that have frustrated me.
Oh, most definitely.
So, yeah, so it's like I have really conflicted feelings on it, and I might have to rate it like 2.5 to 3 stars. Like going above 3 seems like I think it's not solid enough in its, I guess maybe 3 stars, I wouldn't go above that because I feel like it still undermines itself, but it is a better movie than a lot of the other movies. So yeah, maybe 3.
I'm going to go 3.5.
Okay.
I like how this movie gives stuff for the human characters to do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love how there are mini Destoroyahs for, like, SWAT teams to fight and for the reporter Yukari to, like, flee from.
Yes.
I like how Miki has stuff to do, even if she doesn't have really a character arc in and of herself. Like, she doesn't really rise to the occasion, but at the very least, she has, like, stuff to do. There is the inklings of, like, she is thinking of her future and thinking of her like legacy in her work with Godzilla. And I also like Godzilla's characterization here. He's going through the worst time imaginable.
Yeah.
And the thing that really drives him over the edge, besides his own pain, is the loss of his son. And I do think it's really, really cool, the concept of Godzilla dies, but then Godzilla Jr. saves Tokyo by taking on the mantle of his father. I think that's a really cool shot. I think that's a cool idea. And I think the concept of even when Godzilla dies, there will always be another Godzilla is kind of, pertinent to the franchise as a whole.
Also to the still overhanging threat of nuclear weapons still being around.
And while I do wish that Miki had more of a rise to the occasion, I think this is wrong, that kind of stuff. I do think a movie that frames a sort of like, here is a situation where the stakes are so high that this is how people can justify to themselves using a weapon of mass destruction to save the day. I think that's also a relevant thematic statement to the Godzilla franchise itself.
Yes, I would agree.
And Kenkichi doesn't really have an arc. Yukari doesn't really have an arc. She's there to get attacked by the Destoroyah. Dr. Ijuin is the one who, looks over the city and is like, oh, dang, maybe the misuse of science and nuclear energy can lead to bad consequences. At the very least, we get that.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not Serizawa, but,
He goes from being, I don't have responsibility for my creation to, perhaps mistakes were made.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to give this movie 3.5. 3.5 out of 5 is what I'm going to give this movie.
I wouldn't go above 3.5.
Yeah. Biollante is still my favorite movie of the Heisei era by far, and then Return of Godzilla after that. I think this movie is solid. I just think there are points when it trips over itself, and I think part of that is they gave each of these movies after Biollante a 1-year production schedule.
Yeah.
They didn't have to do that, but they chose to do that, and it shows in a bit of the movie. But it definitely feels like Return of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Biollante, and then Godzilla vs. Destoroyah fit as a trilogy.
Yeah.
Because this is not the same level of quality as Godzilla vs. Mothra, Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah, Godzilla vs. Super Mechagodzilla 2, or Godzilla vs. Space Godzilla. This is the leagues ahead of quality in front of those movies.
Yeah, I would say if you were only going to watch a few movies from the Heisei era, Return of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. Biollante, and Godzilla vs. Destoroyah are going to get you the best of that era.
Yeah. You'll be a little confused by the addition of Godzilla Jr., but other than that.
Yeah, he has a kid at some point. It's fine. Don't worry too much about it.
So, one last fun fact here. Director Takeo Okawara stated in an interview on CNN, quote, "I want people to look at the death of Godzilla, knowing that he was created by nuclear power and the most selfish existence in the world, mankind. I am looking forward to seeing Godzilla in the US." Kayla, what's the next movie we're watching?
Next, we'll be watching Godzilla 1998. Be sure to watch the English version because this is the first American Godzilla. USA, USA.
If you don't count the Godzilla Power Hour, this is the first American Godzilla movie.
Yeah. Or the recut of Godzilla King of the Monsters. But this is the first feature film made in America about Godzilla. I'm sure it's going to be fascinating. I'm very excited, actually, to get to this.
Kayla, don't look up anything about this movie.
I won't look up anything. The only thing I know about this movie is that there was an advertisement they did in conjunction with Taco Bell, and it had the Taco Bell Chihuahua that has since disappeared from Taco Bell advertising, probably for being offensive. And the little Chihuahua, I had a stuffed animal of the little Chihuahua, Yo quiero Taco Bell, and the Chihuahua is running around going after Godzilla, and I think it was to advertise they had fish tacos or something at Taco Bell. And it was this Chihuahua, in all of his determination and hunger, is going to turn Godzilla into a seafood taco.
There was a lot of advertising for this movie, and we'll get into that next episode.
This is America in the 90s.
Yeah.
So we could do a bonus podcast on all of the ads around this film, probably.
Oh, no, this is going in the episode. I'm going to be talking about it in the historical context. There was a lot of advertising for this movie.
Excellent. I love ads. Let's go. All right. If you liked this podcast, be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, leave a comment, and share with a friend. Follow us on social media. We got the links in the show notes. We also have a Ko-fi. You can support us there and get access to cool bonus content like extra episodes and access to the private Discord where you can talk with other geeks about Godzilla and all things Digital Kaiju. Check it out. Gorilla Whale is a production of Digital Kaiju Studios. It is hosted and produced by Kevin Carpenter and Kayla Knutson. Gorilla Whale has no official affiliation with Toho, Legendary, or any other companies associated with the Godzilla franchise. We thank you for watching along with us. Until next time, watch out for kaiju.
Watch out for kaiju.
I hope it's... What if it's bad? Do people like Godzilla Night? I'm not going to look it up.